All right. Intrache discussions of truth. Got a double header for you today. We are going to receive Carrie Madej in about 10 minutes. Dr. Carrie Madej. She's a osteopathic DO, osteopathic and internal medicine doctor. Kansas City University of Medicine and Biosciences. She has been incredibly active the past couple years, doing work for your vaccine liberty. Meaning, what I mean by that is to give you equal footing as to whether you can receive the jab, or be it inoculation that I refer to, per the Learned Elders of Zion publication that's over 100 years old, that calls for an inoculation of the masses. This is not a vaccine. We know that. So we're hosting Dr. Madej here in about 10 minutes. Then the second hour, at the regular time slot, we're going to be hosting Robert Bruce Spencer. He's an American anti-Muslim author and blogger, one of the key figures of the counter-jihad movement. He's published 2 New York Times best-selling books, I believe. So we're talking about his newest book and the oncoming battle he sees. Well, the current battle he sees developing in the United States. So that's what's on slate here this afternoon, folks. My website, of course, is iantrottier.com. That's INTROTTIER.com. I can be followed on Twitter and or Instagram. You know, we're taking on the Goliath here. Folks like myself, I've been doing this now. This is the 7th year that I've been doing this show and writing my articles. I'm simply an American that is doing all that he can to retain the liberties that I enjoy. That means these very kind of elementary constitutional rights that we have in regards to free speech, free press, freedom of religion, which is likely, and I'm non-denominational, right? I don't get into religion. I don't get into UFOs, but I don't get into religion. Now, what's the equation between religion and UFOs? Extraterrestrial. So, yeah. I mean, if you believe in God or whatever you believe God is, which is your freedom to do so, then wouldn't that mean that God is an extraterrestrial? Yeah, because if you're considering the conventional interpretation of God, right, that lives in a heaven, then that is extraterrestrial, not on this planet. So that's how I equate the UFO with God, if you will. And I get into that in my book. You can go to Books A Million right now. Type in my name, Ian Trottier, and No More Lies. That'll bring up avenues to purchase the book. It's on pre-order right now. As of about 8 weeks ago, at least. We're very close, was the word that I got from the publisher, to printing. So Freedom Reserve, No More Lies, which has had a contract with the publisher for over 4 years, and has been being worked on as a book. It took 4 years to write that. So I am proud of it, and I've already started on a second book, which I hope will be out come fall. I hope that will be out come fall. But let me, for instance, this is, there's things that we can do, obviously, as individuals. If it really seems like, if it weren't for the United States, the global system, if you will, and the planet that we live on, right? This kind of this organism that we are present on, would likely have been have fallen into this Great Reset, right? Which the now King Charles, the then Prince, was talking about with Klaus Schwab and his World Economic Forum. This is an opportune time, basically saying, with this COVID, right? It was an opportune time to Insert a digital form. We don't need to be, tangibly exchanging debt paper, right? Which is what the Federal Reserve notes are, for instance. If it weren't for people like Carrie Madej, and this is the first time she's joined the program, but if it weren't for people like her, if it weren't for people like Brian Artis, who's a former guest on the show, weren't for people like Josh Yoder, who's a former guest on the show, weren't for people like that, and Miriam Hennon, happy birthday. If it weren't for people like that, and even J.P. Lindstroth, who's been a regular on the show for many years, really since some of the early days. If it weren't for some of these people, right, and people like you, then the world would probably have fallen into um, certainly a short track to installing this Great Reset. What is the Great Reset? How does COVID-19, the perfect, right? The perfect crisis, right? The perfect crisis. How does that equate to economics? Well, very simply, some of this nanotechnology that's out there um, is already out there to kind of create a cryptocurrency attached to you as a human being and what your value is according to the economics of the country you reside in. And that again gets kind of thread into that crypto digital format of what is social credit system, which is being practiced in China. And by the way, let me just mention Yeti, um, the Yeti thermoses, and I don't know if that's the correct word to be used. I think thermos is a brand, but the Yeti container that keeps drinks warm, I purchased one about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I believe it was. $60 is it's the one of their larger sizes, and it's garbage. It's now after I don't know 20 uses. It is now the knob on the top to twist has become stripped. The threads have become stripped, and of course, you can grab it right now, and it says on the bottom, it says "Made in China." Made in China. Designed in Texas, made in China. This is a 46 ouncer. Boom. I mean, folks, that's my error, right? I made the mistake consciously, and I looked at it before I bought it. I knew they'd made it in China, but I'd made that decision, the decision to purchase a product made in China. We must stop buying crap made in China. Now, not that the Chinese don't put out good things, but most of the stuff that they that is made over abroad by these American companies is done at large profit margins, and of course, made there, shipped back over here, sold for 4 times the amount that it costs Yeti likely to make this product, have the Chinese make this product and put their label on it. They're crap. You have to stop buying these things in China. And Walmart, as lovely it is to walk into Walmart, buy some milk or buy some toothpaste, right? They're the lowest prices, and those products are probably not necessarily made in China, but then you buy some workout gloves or what it may be, some yarn. Um, Walmart's probably the worst offender of reselling items that have been made in China. We must stop this. Home Depot's another one. Yeah, it's lovely. I love going to Home Depot. It's like a candy store for a man, right? A man that likes that type of thing, tools, construction, building things. I love going to Home Depot, but these companies make their products, their tools. The majority of them are all made in China. Makita is one product that I like. It's a Japanese-made product, serves well. But these other products, a lot of these other products are made in China. It's garbage. I'm very upset with this Yeti product. Right, it's this Texas company with this cool name. What is the Yeti? Yeti's kind of like this mysterious creature from the Himalayas or something like that. It's like a Bigfoot of the Himalayas. I think that's what that is. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a cool name. Great little brand that's been growing now for 10 years. But this is a crap product, and I'm going to write to them. I'm going to tell them it's garbage. I'm going back down to the place that sold it to me. I want my money back. I want a product that's made in the United States. I want people to take pride in their work. I want a product that's going to stand the test of time in that sense. And our products, our cars out of Detroit have been made well for a long time now. So, but anyway, I want you to conceptualize when you look at if this is your first time listening to me, if you're now familiar, just now familiarizing yourself with my work. you have to look at the global landscape and what are the traditional powers. For instance, have you ever heard of, and I'm going to bring Carrie on right here in a moment, but I want you to consider, have you ever heard of the donation of Constantine? You ever heard of that? Do you know what that is? The donation of Constantine. It's a fabricated, forged Roman empirical decree by which the fourth century emperor Constantine the Great supposedly transferred authority over to Rome and the western part of the Roman Empire to the Pope. You know, these transatlantic slave trades where the Africans were being bought, sold elsewhere, Portugal, Spain, England, here in the U.S. These are all based off of papal bulls. Rome. Look at these traditional powers and see how they may be of relevance to today. So that's the stuff that I get into because it's important. It's not being taught in our public education system. It's not even being taught at universities. I don't think you got to really dig for this kind of stuff. And they probably, the paperwork that's being taught, if it's being taught along those lines, it's probably not getting a very good grade. I don't know. These learning institutions seem very socialistic today, very different than what it was when I was in school. But we're always continuously in school, right? So anyway, so that's kind of look at these global powers and how that has influenced different things today. And it's very, very simple. I'm going to call Carrie right now, but it's very simple. The United States is in a $30 trillion debt. That's a massive federal debt. Regardless of Democrat, Republican, the debt continues to skyrocket out of control. We've got to get that under control. I'm going to bring on Carrie, calling her right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Carrie Madej.
Hello?
Yes, Carrie, Ian Trottier here.
Yes, nice to meet you, Ian.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to Discussions of Truth, the first time you've joined. And Carrie, take a moment, introduce yourself for listeners. Mostly, many of them likely know a little bit about you, but take a moment and introduce yourself if you would, Dr. Madej.
Sure, yeah. My name is Carrie Madej, and I was trained in osteopathic and internal medicine since 2001, and settled in Georgia, owned my own clinic, medical director, taught medical students. And I've just done research, and I have knowledge on what is going on currently with the shots. I've looked at things under the microscope, and so I have knowledge about that. So I've been speaking about warning people about the dangers in those shots, as well as nanotechnology. And I also believe in our bodies can heal ourselves. And so I teach people how they can heal their own body, what makes us sick, so they don't have to keep going to the traditional hospitals and clinics.
And Carrie, I believe you run in some of the circles of former guests of mine. Dr. Tenpenny had joined my show early on, 2017. Dr. Judy Mikovits, I believe you work with her. And then Brian Artis, who's actually become a friend of mine. So this is really great to have you to the program. I want to ask you a question. You've got an extensive career. You're very well educated. You're a doctor. When was it that you started kind of second guessing what may be happening in your country in regards to healthcare?
Well, that actually started a long time ago when I was training, because through my training, where, for instance, we were part of a study with Pfizer where they discovered that the cause of people having blockages in their arteries for heart attacks, it came from a bacteria in the mouth. And so we learned that there's a cause for just about any heart attack that could be prevented. It was an infection. But when Pfizer found out that people could be cured, and the hospitals found out that people could be cured, that means there's no money. They told all of us involved to be quiet, never tell anybody about this, or we would never work again. So several times in my career, we were all threatened and told never to tell anyone. And the reason was, when we saw something that could cure somebody, that was bad. You could never, ever really make somebody better or have a cure. And so I learned that in my early on in training. So of course, that was very depressing to hear that. But I also was taught in osteopathic medicine, which was more holistic. So I always applied that with my patients in the past.
Well, thanks for standing up and staying strong to your values, Dr. Madej. With the COVID fiasco, this kind of threat, this danger, Did you immediately were you immediately suspicious that this was not what media was making it out to be? Walk listeners through that process for you, and then I want you to talk about the injections as you refer to them as shots.
Yes, I knew something was wrong right away because they were wanting the lockdowns, and they also mentioned the word vaccine right away. And so when I researched what were they putting inside of these vaccines, I was horrified because these ingredients were talked about in meetings that I had attended back between 2013 to the late 2014, um, while I was in Georgia. So scientific and business owners meetings, they talked about using these things. Some were for behavior control, some were for surveillance, some were just to change the human body. So when I saw these same ingredients that had been talked about in these meetings, I was very upset. I knew that it was for a different intention, a different purpose altogether. And so, after some time of researching it more, I decided it was my duty to speak up and let people know um, what what the information that I knew about it, because I knew that it wasn't for the health and well being of the public at all.
So you were able to identify some of the ingredients in this supposed vaccine, which we know is not a vaccine by definition. And what about the virus itself? Was there anything in the virus that stuck out at you as being alarming?
Well, I mean, I don't even know if there really is a virus. Nobody really knows that, right? You know, they can, things can be spread through the air or the water purposely. So, the way it was spread was really suspicious. There was only pockets of the U.S. that got it, and then it seemed to be that a lot of people were coming down with just the normal flu symptoms or asthma, and they weren't being treated properly. They're being told to go home, neglection of care. So I think a lot of fear and panic of pumping up something that wasn't really there. I kind of go along with the lines of Lee Merritt that maybe some kind of a contact poisoning was used in certain areas, and then as time went on, people were just being diagnosed incorrectly with flu, really flu or the colds or something like that, with this COVID syndrome. So the people that I had seen before when I was treating, I would always treat them as if they had an atypical pneumonia, like atypical bacteria, and they got better. So, and that was with antibiotics. So you don't treat a virus with antibiotics. I think we're not being told the truth about this, but I don't think we have to worry about some virus that's just natural in the environment at all.
What are your comments in regards to the conduct of Anthony Fauci? Give listeners an opinion on that.
Oh, well, he's just a liar. I mean, every time he says one thing, a month or two later, he says quite the opposite. And he goes back and forth, back and forth. There's nothing truthful that comes out of his mouth. Um, he's just one of many people that are involved with this agenda. So, you can get rid of him, but the agenda goes on. We need to look at this from a bigger picture. So we need, it's us, we the people, according to the Constitution, they're supposed to be serving us, any of these government entities. And if they're not doing their job, it's up to us. It's our duty to start this government anew. But I haven't seen them do their job properly yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it seems like there's strides that are being made, and I want you to address the agenda. And again, we'll go back to what you know about the shot and how people can kind of approach that. It's not being forced like it was certainly, but what we've got recently here with the House Freedom Caucus is some of these key these key members of Congress, Boebert, Gates, Biggs. They've really stood up strong to what they feel is the elements of the swamp that are in Congress. And what was it yesterday? Now that the Pentagon has now relaxed mandates on our soldiers. Are you seeing an increase? It seems to me, Carrie, that there are more and more people dying, Now they're not being it's not being equated to being injected with these so-called vaccines, but it seems like more and more people are dying. It seems like once a day somebody that's fairly well known is dying. Are you seeing a correlation in that? And then Carrie, describe what the agenda is in your view. Well, what is the agenda for listeners?
Well, I think a lot of us that were speaking out in the beginning predicted that it would, take a couple of years, 3 years or so, when we start to see more of the deaths, which we are,
Yeah.
because we knew in the beginning that the way this was designed, this injection that's falsely called a vaccine, it has what it's doing is suppressing your important immune checkpoints indefinitely, meaning the way your body normally protects itself is being affected, it's being stopped. So your body can't protect itself from new cancer cells or new infections or toxins that are getting in it. It's weakening its defenses. And so in these early studies, we did see, there was evidence of more cancer cells, of course, of more infections or having a weakened immune system. So this was expected. The data was there. It was just ignored by all of the health officials, unfortunately. As far as the agenda,
Yeah.
People need to realize that the United States is answering to really World Economic Forum, the United Nations, World Health Organization. It's answering to other entities other than itself. It's not acting as a sovereign country anymore, which is sad. And so you have to look at what are these organizations wanting? Well, they truly want a one world government. They want to be able to control people. They want one everything. One religion, one government, one healthcare system, everything like that. And if you want everybody to be the same really quickly, that's not a good thing ever. The World Health Organization has been really strict in saying they believe in using vaccines for everything. At the meetings I went to, they mentioned that they thought vaccines were the key to everything. They wanted people to get vaccines for everything. They felt like the future was to connect the human body to the digital realm so that all of us would be walking Wi-Fi bodies. It's called the Internet of Things or Internet of Bodies, so that and each one of us would walk around, and unknowing to us, we would be putting out a Wi-Fi signal that would be picked up, and things in our body, data would be gathered, and this would be accumulated and monitored. So that's a surveillance system. So that's, why would you want to do that to somebody unless you really wanted to control them? So that's one thing. And that was actually talked about in Atlanta business owners meeting I went to. They talked about using this technology to spy on the people and to modify their behavior to make them nicer people. It sounds crazy, I know, but unfortunately, if you do your due diligence and you look and see what are their statements, they want everyone to be connected to the digital world, whether they like it or not. And the reasons aren't really for our health and welfare. It's really for surveillance. It's a police state kind of thing. So, we have a window of opportunity here as people are waking up to what is going on, to not comply, to turn things around this way, to stand up for what is right. I think people are finally waking up this year. It took a little time with the data to get them to understand, and we need to unite our voices. So we have to do it this year. 2023 is very important.
What are the ingredients, Dr. Madej? What are the ingredients in these shots that relate to transmission with Wi-Fi, and explain, if you will, your understanding of how that equates to transhumanism?
Well, inside of the shot, they use nanotechnology, which they've never unveiled before in mass until now. This is the first time. And I actually looked at Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson, the vials under the microscope from 3 different states and several different times. So I wanted to see what was actually in them. I just observed under the microscope, and every time that I observed in all of the vials, there's evidence of a superconducting material inside of them. So, in other words, that is a liquefied computing system. It's undeniable that it's in there. And I'm not the only one to see this. This has been reported all over the world by many other researchers. And so, what is this used for? Well, it goes inside the host, the body, and over time, it can actually assemble and form really like a computing system that can be within a living being, you yourself. Um, this isn't good for your health. This is simply to connect the human body to the internet. Again, it's a way to connect you digitally, the human body, to the internet of everything. And so, in essence, that's the beginning of something that's called transhumanism. So that's changing the human body as we know it right now. It's really important people know this quickly, because as each shot is given, it's a cumulative effect. More and more of this substance is being put into the body. And what does it really do? None of us really know. I mean, we know it's not healthy. We know it can kill people and make them sick. But it can also, in those people that are surviving it, it can be used again to have surveillance on them, to connect them digitally to this digital world. So, yeah, these are crazy times. But knowledge is power, and understanding this, you have to make a decision about how you want to live your life. I know I want to live mine, and I believe that we unite. We have a wonderful constitution that protects our rights if we use it and activate it. And I believe that we need God right now too. So I believe in prayer.
So, Dr. Madej, I want to get your opinion on how someone would go about detoxing themselves if they have allowed this injection, this shot into their bodies. What do you suggest that they do? And the other question I have for you is, are these nanoparticles, is this nanotechnology, is it breaking the blood-brain barrier? Does it have a particular spot in the body that it's lodging itself?
Um, well, what they're telling us, that the vaccine is making the body produce, they're making the person's body become a factory, and the person is producing what they're claiming is a spike protein, and they claim that's part of the virus. I mean, this is what they're saying. Well, what has been admitted since they unveiled that is that the spike protein is very inflammatory, and it's very sticky like Velcro. So imagine little Velcro pieces that are very inflammatory just being produced for an unknown amount of time, unknown quantity every day in that person's body. So it goes everywhere in the body. It has some preferences. We know the ovaries in women, 164 times preference for that, which is really dangerous for fertility. Of course, the endothelium of the blood vessels, so that would make it stickier in the blood vessels. The heart. We do know that even the nervous system is affected. So yes, it can cross into the nervous system, the blood-brain barrier, these spike proteins. And it's causing inflammation everywhere. We don't know, there's no stopping point for this. When the manufacturers were asked, how long does this effect last? The answer in the beginning was, well, it will burn itself out, which is not a scientific answer, meaning they don't know either. It's a big experiment happening on people right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's scary, really. And what do you suggest people that are listening that have received the injection? I call it an inoculation. Um, how do they detox? Can they detox?
Well, nobody knows how to really detox or take it out of the body, so we don't know that. Um, we do know ways to make yourself healthier, that when people do that, they do feel better. So many of us recommend like a heavy metal detox. You can do that with herbs like cilantro. You can also do that with a supplement called DMSA. DMSA. That's a supplement you can get online, and it's really easy to take. You take 3 capsules every 2 weeks, and you keep doing that every 2 weeks for about a year. Slowly takes out heavy.
It was Dr. Madej, ladies and gentlemen, and she again she'll be in St. George. She'll be in St. George this weekend, Dr. Madej will be talking about resolution and how to heal oneself, more than talking about what's in these quote vaccines. We know that, well, there's two things that are going on in my mind. Okay, yeah, and if you listen to this and you're thinking, well, in the election of what was it, 2020 was the most honest and transparent election the country's ever had. I suggest, I differ in that, and I suggest that you look at a book called Vote Scam, written by two brothers, the Collier brothers. And this traces back a collusion of big tech, IBM, with big media, and how elections have been manipulated. Now, this book was written over 15 years ago, I believe. How presidential elections have been manipulated and rigged going back to the time of LBJ. So, likely meaning the Trump election that put him in office was done on purpose. So, if that was done on purpose and Trump was put in office the first place, why? Because there's something called order out of chaos. You divide and you conquer. Now, I don't know if that's what happened. I'm just suspecting that that is possibly what happened. But what we do know, my personal experience, because likely you lived it as well, is that at about, what was it, 10 p.m. Eastern, numbers started dramatically flipping in favor of Biden. We didn't. There's 350 million people in this country. Why aren't more of us speaking up and speaking out? Yes, that election was not transparent. Okay. If you disagree, then you disagree. I honor that. I respect it. But what we do know, again, is that, let's take into consideration that there's no way they could have this guy continue in office. Let's say they allowed him to go in, meaning the strains that control the government financially. Okay, that is the strings behind the Federal Reserve economically, right? You follow the money. Money controls everything, right? I mean, you can't operate without money. You got to have some type of income coming in, right? Whether you got a trust fund, or you work as a carpenter, or you work at a car wash, or a restaurant, you've got to have currency, right, to live. You got to pay your bills. Um, it's just that's just the reign that we're all subjugated to. There's no way around that. That's the system. So the government doesn't operate unless it's funded, right? What regulates the American economy? That is the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve in itself is a central banking system. And I think for the longest time, it wouldn't even publicize that it itself was a central bank. Because let's not forget, Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson dueled over that exact banking mechanism. I said Jefferson, Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton wanted to adopt, and that was what was successfully adopted in the early days of this country, this nation, was a central banking system. There is one president out of 46, one that left office without a debt, and that is Andrew Jackson. I believe the year was 1832. And he ran on the reelection platform to literally kill the bank, destroy the bank. He did not, from my understanding, want the central banking system to continue. So, therefore, if money controls everything, it makes complete sense that one president out of 46 was able to leave office without a debt. 45 have been in debt. That includes Abe Lincoln. That includes John F. Kennedy. That includes Bush's, Obama, Clinton, Trump, and now Biden. And this debt now gets incredibly, it's skyrocketing. It's what is it? Over 31 trillion? Close to 31 trillion? I'd have to look at the debt clock. But here's the point. If Trump had gotten in there and simply was doing too much, that these powers, these European central banking powers, Bank of International Settlements, Basel, Switzerland, World Economic Forum, okay, these banking powers out of Europe that regulate the American banking system, otherwise known as the Federal Reserve Central Bank, that doesn't have any gold. So there's nothing intrinsic that it prints. You can't convert any bill that it prints to something of substance that you can tangibly put into a safe, like a piece of gold or silver. Okay, this is what JFK argued against. This is what Abraham Lincoln was arguing against. So if Trump was simply doing too much for his country to save it, uh, that he was pushed out. And it is apparent now that this Biden administration, which I urge you to consider calling it a regime, right, uh, has now taken reins of DC, set the sails right on the ship, and then poof, all of a sudden, you no longer get this push to to install this great reset, this digitization, and the COVID thing has just kind of gone away, right? I mean, it's maybe once a month you get something that comes up on the mainstream media. Oh, there's a new strain. They kind of test the grounds. And when I say they, in regards to the media, it all goes back to the Council on Foreign Relations, which is regulated by um, the London, the British arm of that, the Royal Institute of Foreign Affairs. I think it may be called. Um, the Council on Foreign Relations regulates all mainstream media in the United States, um, and so therefore, if the mainstream media has now taken the foot off the pedal of the whole COVID thing and the vaccine thing, and now there's this push, which I attribute to the House Freedom Caucus. I've met politicians in regards to this, so and again, you must do the same. Your voice, if you have one, I suspect you do, unless you're mute, which is possible. But as long as you're not a mute, you have a voice, which means you can pick up a phone and you can talk to politicians, just as I do. And it's necessary, it's needed. You must do it. Um, you can have your opinion heard, and that is the great liberty that you have been given, your inheritance, if you will, of being an American. If you're an American, you have that ability to exercise it because it's making a difference. And like I'm saying, what I'm getting to here is the Freedom Caucus here, the House Freedom Caucus, which was initially set up by Jim Jordan, Meadows, and DeSantis, my understanding. It's carrying some weight now. It's carrying some weight because it's now forced. It's now forced McCarthy and his people to adopt certain pillars that have become non-negotiable, if you will, right? So McCarthy was told to accept these things in order for them to get their vote. And we know that six of them, um, uh, congressional members, representatives, six of them held out and voted present, right? So simply did not extend their vote to McCarthy. Now, I don't know much about McCarthy. I've never met him. But what I'm saying is that you must, like Dr. Madej was talking about, there is a master, right, that pulls the strings of the puppet. This is not a conspiracy theory, folks. This is a fact. And each and every one of you should be demanding answers because you're not being given them. And like Dr. Madej just said, the technology exists. It's there. It's been there. Transhumanism is another issue she talked about. Do you want to convert yourself into kind of these robotic elements? Well, that is how it seems. Now you can get into chemtrails, which is a United States Air Force term from the 1960s. You can get into chemtrails. That's another of these nanoparticles that you could possibly be exposed to, breathing into. Dane Wigington's a guy that's done a lot of research on that. He's a former guest of mine, and you can get a lot of information from him in regards to that. But you must, if you're unhappy, if you're not satisfied with the path that the country is going on, then you must become vocal. You simply must, and you must believe that you can and will make a difference. I'm telling you. But if you don't, send that email, make that phone call. If you don't make your opinion heard, then you won't make a difference. Carrie Madej is no different than you. Dr. Mikovits is no different than you. Some of these other great people, they're no different than you. They're human beings, and they're simply doing work that they know they can do, and that's what I urge you to do. Let the words resonate with you. Again, take a historical approach because it's that these powers that be, I suspect, do not want you. They don't want you to add up, um, make the connections, right? They don't want you to make the connections and add the pieces together, put the pieces together. They don't want you to do that. First off, you're likely in some type of a 9 to 5, and so you don't really have a whole lot of time to do that. Just so happens that my fuse blew in 2016 when I was exposed to the Zika virus in Miami Beach, and I've done nothing but research since, now in its 7th year. It's all I've done because I knew, after I'd done initial research and read a little bit of Anthony Sutton, the guy that walked away from Stanford. I talk about him probably every episode. I knew that this country was in deep, dire situation. Um, but we can reverse course, and I think we are slowly. So I'm going to repeat for you again. Dr. Madej spoke about um, laws and how laws are written, in a sense. What is common law, right? What is canon law? What is God's law? Well, these are all things that the country and the Constitution have been built around, Judeo-Christian laws and principles. And regardless of what your religion is, first off, you're grateful if you're in the United States, you should be grateful for a religious freedom. But more, what I urge you to do is look at a historical perspective. And Eric John Phelps is a guy that I listen to a lot. He's a former guest on my show. He really brings out some very important elements of the past and how, I mean, let's look at it. The United States doesn't exist if it's not for the Puritans, the Protestants, in other words. They were Protestants. They're protesting Roman law that King Henry VIII was living under, right? So I've got my right. Do I have my right king? 1630s, and they left the Church of England, right? They left it because it was still too much tied into Roman law. But if we go back further and we look at, for instance, Constantine the Great, well, Constantine the Great, you likely don't know this. Constantine the Great was crowned emperor of Rome, the Roman Empire, in Aboricum, which is now known as York, which is in England. Okay. And then I had just brought to your attention something called the Donation of Constantine, which in itself is arguable. So here you get Rome, the Pope, saying, well, Constantine deeded, he decreed the fourth century Constantine the Great decreed, supposedly transferred in a decree, authority over to Rome in the western part of the Roman Empire to the Pope. However, that in itself is forged, and that's how this is the historical aspect. How much influence has Rome had on the corruption that you're experiencing right now in the United States? And all the lines that my research points to doesn't pin it on the Jews, doesn't pin it on some secret group of Jewish Kabbalists. No, it doesn't. The Jews were persecuted, killed, murdered, slain in Hitler's Germany. Why? Because Hitler was doing the work of the Pope. And yes, this is a holy war. And who's the tip of the spear? My research shows, this is my research, that it's the militant order, the military order known as the Society of Jesus, otherwise known as the Jesuits. Now, the Knights of Malta, another historical Inquisition, conquering crusade order, right? These people conquer and destroy Protestant, if you will, nations. That is their objective. Okay, just food for thought as you work to retain those constitutional freedoms. And I'm not meaning to offend anybody's religion. I don't mean to offend Archbishop Vigano, who I believe is 80, 81 years old. He was warning Donald Trump when he was in office that this agenda has been created by the deep state, otherwise known as Rome. And it doesn't stop there. It becomes very blurry what power is controlling Rome, because these old families struggle to control power in Rome. Um, Look at the history after World War II and the Second Vatican Council. But this is what my research is showing, is that this is, if indeed you want to retain your constitutional values, you want to keep your country strong together, then you must look at these old global powers. And you have to relate to how they have planted uh, tentacles in your freedom and aim to destroy them. And it's not a 5-year plan. It's not a 10-year plan. It's a 100-year plus plan. These people have been in power. They have the financial means to draw it out. It's like getting into some type of a local dispute, right? Where there's a legal dispute. Well, it just so happens, it seems, unless you've got a clincher, the party with the more money is going to win, right? The attorney that gets paid more, the one that's going to draw it out. I mean, I ran a small valet parking company in San Francisco, and the largest parking operator in New York um, was threatening to take me to court. Yet I'd been using the name iPark for 7 years at that point in time. It wasn't registered. Empirical Parking found it, registered it. I'd end up selling the name to Imperial Parking. I couldn't face him. I couldn't face him in court. Couldn't. Didn't have the means, right? So what I'm trying to do here is give a parallel as to some of these very well endowed organizations. Okay, they're incredibly well funded, and that's why I implore you, and that's why I say it's up to you. And like Dr. Madej was saying, it's up to each and every one of us. We must work together to save the country. But if you don't see how it needs to be saved, then that's the first challenge that you have. Likely, if you've gotten to this point in this episode and you listen to me, you realize it's in need of some righting. The ship is not right. So it looks like 118th Congress. So some good things happening there, and I'll be back on, folks, in just a few minutes with Robert B. Spencer. He'll be talking about the counter jihad movement. So we thank Dr. Madej, and folks, until next time, share the episode. Until next time, be awesome. And I apologize for Dr. Madej being cut off, because I realized that she was cut off.